Hi, this is Phil Edholm. Welcome to the second in the video training series for the UCStrategies UC Benefit and ROI tool. In this session, you'll learn how to configure the tool to accurately reflect your customer's specific configuration. We'll focus on how to configure it for the population, percentage of UC, and other factors. We'll then focus on benefits, how to configure the tool to accurately impact the benefit results for your customer. These actually build on the tool configurations you learned in Video Training 1, where we went through the 15 questions and how to configure the tool in a simple way. To make it easier for you to find a specific section, these are the 8 specific topic areas covered in this video with the approximate time that each starts within the video. So for example, about 14 minutes in out of the total 32 and a half minutes, the collaboration section. So with that, let's jump now to populations and see how that gets entered. As you can see, we're back in the tool here on the start page. As we discussed in the first video, you can enter these 15 variables to actually configure the tool. But to more optimize the tool for your customer, you can go to the Data Entry tab. So the Data Entry tab actually shows you much more detail about both what you've entered and allows you to change it. So for example, we've configured this and it's been pre-configured with what was entered on that 15 questions on the Start tab. So you notice we've deployed hybrid deployment, 500 total users in 2013, 200 of those are premise users, 300 cloud users. That's a calculated configuration, 550 for 2018, 200 and 350. Those were what we entered. Now you can actually go in here and actually change these values. So for example, you can change this user entry for 550 to 600, actually reflecting the fact that you have more people. And then you can actually potentially change the number of cloud users to 250. So this allows you to configure. You notice we also have here a few tools to allow you and your customer to see what you've entered. Here you can actually see the CAGR of total projected growth. That's the compound annual growth rate. The CAGR for the premise projected growth and the cloud projected growth over the period from 2013 to 2018. You also see over here at the right a little chart that shows you in a bar graph form the total number of users for cloud contact center agents, UC agents, cloud, etc., and then the total number of users as well. Now, if we go a little bit lower down on the page, we actually see the fact, when I move this out of the way, as we talked about earlier, we can move this and put it anywhere on the sheet while we work on the sheet. You'll notice here we actually can enter a number of other variables. So these are the percentages of users that need specific characteristics. So again, UC percentages. So here we've got 50%, and you'll notice that in the basic configuration, the cloud numbers reflect exactly what was on the premise. Now, for example, if you say, well, gee, cloud users are going to be higher, this could be 70, and this could be 90. And you can actually enter those here. Then you can enter the percentage of requiring advanced collaboration. So, if our cloud users, 50% need advanced collaboration. Now, you'll notice that we actually have an error code that came up here because this number cannot go down. So when we enter this as 60, it now comes up to the right number. But the 60 and 40 exceeds the 90. So this number here needs to be 30. And now we've basically corrected the errors. You'll see that throughout the tool, there are error fields. If you enter bad data, it will tell you what to change to enter the right data. So you can reflect this. Now, you'll notice that one thing that's important is the sum of advanced collaboration, advanced mobility, and advanced collaboration mobility can never exceed the total UC percentage. So for example, if I make this number 30, I will get an error message. And the error message says that this sum exceeds the 50. So I could, for example, change this number to 20, and then the error message goes away. Again, over here, because this is equal based on that, I have to do the same over here. So you see that this is how you enter the percentages. Again, the UC percentage is the percentage that require UC, and then these percentages sum to that number cannot be greater. And finally, we've got contact center agents. This is very simple. If you have a contact center and you have 20 agents and you want to give them the UC capabilities, you just enter it here. And then if you think you're going to have 20 all premise based, you might say that's going to grow to 30 agents by 2018. The bottom of the data entry population tab actually tells you what you entered in great detail. So here you actually see the total number of users that were entered, how many are telephony only users. Obviously that's going to be 0 if you're doing an augmentation. Advanced communication, advanced collaboration, advanced mobility, etc. And over here on the right, we actually have those characteristics shown as a bar graph. So you can see the growth here in advanced collaboration users, and here you actually see those percentages you entered in above actually turn into actual numbers of users. And then you see that reflected in the premise and cloud users by year. The last thing on the population tab is the percentage of seats that require a network upgrade. This was actually entered as well on the 15 questions, but you can change it here. Now, if you change it here, it will actually reflect a different value than the 15 questions. So with that, let's jump now to the next part, which is the benefit data and looking at the benefit data. Now we're on the benefit data tab. The benefit data tab actually has two major sections. The very top of this tab is actually a representation of all of the entered benefits and results, and allows you to look at the impact of those. To allow you to see this easier, I'm going to actually zoom out a little bit and zoom this out from 100% actually to about 80% of the size of the screen. And that way you're actually able to see a little bit more of what's going on here. So we actually calculate in the tool for a number of benefits: SIP trunking, business continuity, collaboration, mobility, communication-enabled business processes, general business value, and contact center. And we'll talk about the factors here. What you notice is in each one of these factors, there are multiple factors. This dashboard actually allows you to control what you see. So, for example, on the dashboard, the first thing is the top. You can enter the period of display. So this is basically displays you all the way through, for example, to 2018, or you can look at it for only 2013 prorated, or for 2015. So this is the cumulative benefits through the end of that year. So we'll just leave this at 2018. So this is showing us the full cumulative benefits from installation in 2013 through the end of 2018. Now you'll notice for every benefit, both at a total benefit or at individual sub-benefits, which we'll talk about in a moment, there's a button that allows you to include or exclude that benefit. So if I exclude that benefit, you notice the value went away here, and it also went away in the total, or I can include it. So this allows you to sit down with your customer and decide which benefits you want to include and exclude in the analysis. You'll also notice that next to each benefit, there's a representation, whether that's a hard, specific dollar spend savings. For example, in the SIP trunking, elimination of spend on traditional PSTN trunking costs, or if it's what's traditionally called a soft benefit, or a benefit that is actually monetized through productivity savings and therefore typically other cost savings into the organization around labor costs, etc. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom of this dashboard, it shows both the hard benefits and the soft benefits, and says should we include or exclude the soft or hard benefits, and also shows you what the totals are. So you notice in this analysis, the hard and soft benefits are both about $1.5 million. If we actually say, okay, I really don't believe in soft benefits, I will exclude those, you'll notice they go away. They're all removed from the analysis, and they're removed from the total. Now, I would strongly encourage you to watch the video about selling UC benefits, because it will tell you a lot about how to sell the value of UC benefits. So with that now, let's jump next to how do we actually input each of the individual characteristics and modify them to reflect your customer in terms of the benefits. And this will help you understand each individual benefit as well. As we move down the tab, you'll see that there's Benefit Data Help, which actually is a button you can click to go see data about each of the benefits that will describe it in detail in the tool. So if we click on Benefit Help, you'll notice Here it defines what's in the benefit, for example, business continuity and so on. So this can help you if you forget and you need to sit down with your customer if you're working this and review. So we jump back now to the benefit entry. The first entries we're going to talk about are SIP trunking and business continuity. So SIP trunking is very simple. There's actually entered in the tool the number of minutes that are actually estimated per person in terms of PSTN access. You'll actually see this down at the bottom of the tool. I'll show it to you in a moment. It's actually way down here at the very bottom. But actually that number is actually entered as a data point. The cost of SIP access versus the cost of TDM access is entered here. Now you notice the tool is pre-configured with a cost of 3 cents per minute for PSTN access and 2 cents per minute for SIP access, so TDM versus PSTN. The tool uses those values and the difference to actually calculate the mechanism. And you'll notice there's also a tool that allows you to say for the premise, is it SIP or TDM? So if you're using an existing TDM, this will actually take out the SIP values for premise and only apply it to the cloud users. So this data is actually used to calculate the value you saw up here in the SIP trunking. So what this says is for that 5+ year period through 2018, based on saving 1 cent per minute, having our users on average have 600 minutes of PSTN access per month. Now, if your customer says that they actually want to change the value very simply by clicking on the actual amount here. If you click there, you notice it says actual data entry, and we can actually click and enter actual value. So, for example, if their real cost is 0.04 cents per month, or per minute, that will actually change the entire equation. And in fact, what you'll notice is that our $195,000 went to $390,000. So that's typical throughout the benefits section of how you change a benefit. You enter the value, and the tool will actually not let you enter a value that's not correct there. So you can't, for example, enter Bob and have it accept Bob as a value. If you enter Bob, it'll come back and tell you that's not a valid value. The next section is business continuity. So business continuity is all about what is the benefit of UC to avoid having to spend money to prepare for a business continuity event. For example, if a building was to burn down or catch fire or be hit by an airplane or in any other way become unusable, how do you continue your business operations? For most organizations, having a business continuity strategy is important. So if you look here, the first thing is, what is the continuity impacted population? We've actually put into the tool in the base 15 questions 30%, saying 30% of the employees need to have a business continuity strategy. The other 70%, we assume that we're not going to worry about this if they can't work and it's not going to have an impact. Again, you can change that percentage, by entering, 50% if that's the right number for your customer. Then, what is the continuity alternative? I won't spend a lot of time here, but there are 4 different alternatives. Obviously, none, which will essentially eliminate the cost. Alternative office, lease space, or telecommuting. Then you can actually look next at what are the other options in the space. What is the cost of an alternative office? This is per employee that's supported. What is the cost of lease space and this is actually based on a concept that says, if my building could not be occupied for a year, what would it cost me to lease space on a short-term, high-cost lease for that employee, divided by the number of years when that event might happen. So this $200 per year cost assumes that will only happen once every 100 years and cost $20,000 per employee. And finally, if you do telecommuting, what's the current annual cost of telecommuting to prepare for telecommuting and pay for your employees to have a telecommuting non-UC solution in place? Essentially, whichever one is chosen is used. So we've chosen lease space here. So this analysis assumes for every employee, now we have 50% of the employees, which is 250 of our 500 is $200. So we'll actually see that show up here as the business continuity expense. Then we get into the next sections, which is collaboration. So let's now talk about collaboration expenses. So now let's talk about the collaboration benefits. There are a number of collaboration benefits. The first one is meeting start impact. This is based on a very simple impact that UC can have in any organization. Typically in most organizations, meetings start 4 to 5 minutes late. People arrive late because they're not invited, they don't get the right reminders, it's not easy to get into the meeting, it's not one click to come in. And secondly, because people don't have the right documents. Did you get the file? No, I didn't. Well, Steve, will you send that document over? So what we've done is actually use that data to say, what would the impact be if a good UC tool allowed you to get meetings started just a little sooner? So you notice the first thing is we actually have the percentage of users that regularly attend meetings. And again, just like above, we can change this. 60% is based on the percentage entered in the populations page of the 15 questions of advanced collaboration users. The assumption is advanced collaboration users are people who attend meetings. So we can change that from 50% to 60%, just like above. Then next is how many meetings are attended per week. And you notice we've actually taken a very conservative number of 3 per week. Not 3 per day, but 3 per week. So we can say, make this 5 per week, 1 per day. Then what is the impact, the minutes saved per meeting? Now we've said it's about 2 minutes per meeting. On an average, meetings will start 2 minutes sooner. Perhaps your customer says, no, that really should just be 1 minute, just 1 minute sooner. And then you'll notice again, as before, once we put that data in, that information then is reflected up here in meeting and time savings efficiency. Again, over that 5.5 year period, 5+ year period, that's $400,000 of savings just at a minute, at 1 minute per meeting, average saved when the meeting starts. The second calculation for collaboration is the effectiveness of the collaboration meeting. This reflects the fact that UC tools, including things like web conferencing and document sharing and shared and partitioned screens, allows you to be much more effective in your meeting. So again, the percentage here is based on those percentages that come out of the UC. We've derated them slightly. So instead of being the 60% of advanced collaboration, we said it only applies to 50% of the time. Then we look at what is the percentage of hours spent per week in virtual collaboration. Again, you can change this. We've said it's 3 hours per week, reflecting our numbers above. And then what is the increase in collaboration effectiveness as a percentage? So that says, again, a percentage of meeting time reduction. So a meeting, instead of taking a full hour, may get done in 3 minutes less. That's 5%. So again, think about it. How many times in a meeting, someone says, gee, does everyone have the document? Let me send the document. Everybody waits for 5 minutes trying to distribute information. Or I didn't really understand that. Can you explain it again? Again, this is the effectiveness that UC can bring to a collaborative event. Then we go into 2 kinds of travel. The first is internal remote site travel and internal local site travel. Remote site travel says when someone has to actually travel to a remote site for an internal meeting, what does it cost? So again, the percentages here are based on a percentage of the UC users and advanced collaboration users defined in the population. That's what's in the gray box. You can enter the actual percentage for the individual customer. As you can see, we estimate 6 annual internal trips per traveler. So that means for that percentage of employees, the 13% in this case, going to 22% in 2018, we're estimating once every 2 months they would make an internal trip that required airfare and hotel to go to another site for an internal meeting. The average trip cost for that's $1,000. And we said basically on average 20% of those trips could be avoided by the use of UC. And obviously this includes video conferencing and the other capabilities that come with the UC package. So again, very conservative numbers in the basic analysis. The internal local site travel basically says the time that's used by people traveling from where they are located to another local site for a meeting. And again, you see here percentages are higher because this tends to impact a larger percentage of the population. Average monthly internal trips are 4 once a week. Someone travels to another location. Average round trip time is 30 minutes. And the percentage that can be avoided is 20%. Again, if you have a customer that is a single site location, you could eliminate both of these. They were not going to be real benefits in terms of UC on that organization. But for many organizations, this is an impact. Continuing down through the other pieces is reduction in external audio and web conferencing. Again, a percentage of people that use it, the average monthly cost, the number of users that use it as a external web conferencing, and the average monthly cost. And the perspective here is that a percentage of that this actually is a reduced cost because it's being provided by the UC solution, both audio conferencing and web conferencing services for those folks. Again, the percentages here are based on the people that use a percentage of the advanced UC functionality users that are in the actual populations number. So next, let's look at the mobility impact of what UC and benefits. The next area we want to look at is mobility. So as we go down the page, you'll see mobility. And there in mobility, 3 specific mobility impacts that we've analyzed here in the tool. The percentage of mobile users comes from the mobile data entry tab. This was the percentage that were selected as users of mobile, the advanced mobile capabilities of UC. The first area is reducing company paid cellular minutes. The assumption is that we can reduce the company paid cellular minutes by actually using the UC mobile application capability for communications. So here we assume that we're paying for 800 minutes. The average cost of a minute is 5 cents. 30% of those could be eliminated. So that's actually the savings per employee for company minutes. Obviously, for some companies, this would mean re-examining the plan of the concept of paying essentially for unlimited minutes for a mobile device, and instead saying, we will only pay for this amount of your mobile device because we're giving you a UC tool. So this is one that is monetized not just by the implementation, but also by company policy. Another area is reducing internal roaming charges or international roaming charges. This actually reflects, as you can see, a very small percentage of the users, 2%, that actually do major international travel. How many days per year spent traveling internationally is 15. Average minutes per day on cellular calls that can be converted to Wi-Fi is 30 minutes while they're traveling. And the average cost of international roaming minutes is 50 cents. So again, this is an area that may vary highly depending upon the company. If it's a purely domestic, North American, US, Canadian company, this would not apply and you would actually eliminate it from the tool. If it's a typical company that does international business, this number may be much higher. That 2% may be 3 or 4%, and the number of minutes per day may be 60, in which case this can become a much more significant cost savings. And finally, improve mobile productivity. And this is really the fact that now with UC, with a great mobile UC client, you can actually have integration of those workers more effectively into the workplace when they're not in the workplace environment. So basically this says for those workers, the percentage up above, the mobile workers, what percentage of their workday is spent out of the office, and what is the productivity enhancement that can happen during that workday. And you notice we've only said a 1% productivity enhancement on the 20%, but that again calculates an impact. One of the things that's important here was you look at the mobility, we actually have to put in salary. This was actually, as you notice up above in the collaboration also, we put in a salary number, a burden number. It's estimated at 40%. Burden is all the overhead for facilities, IT expenses, medical expenses, management, all those other costs. 45% is a very reasonable conservative number, which actually then says, what is the annual cost? So we've said here the average salary is $80,000 with a 45% burden. That's about $116,000 annual salary. And that's actually the numbers that are used here. Again, you can change those. And if a discussion with your customer reflects that a larger or potentially smaller value is appropriate for their company. So with that, let's jump to the next area, which is CEBP, or Communication-Enabled Business Processes. Communications-enabled business processes is about the concept of applying communications to a specific business process. If you actually listen to the video on selling the value of UC. We'll talk about some specific examples there. But here is actually how you enter that data when you've discussed with your customer a specific example. So there actually are two process time to completion analysis possible in the tool, and then there's one called process continuity. So let's talk about entering a process time completion. So a typical process that might take a certain amount of time to complete. Let's say process typically takes 5 days to complete, but it turns out that 2 days of the time in that process is because the right people can't get together to actually solve the process. So if we add communications in, we can actually eliminate 2 days out of the 5-day process and do the process in 3 days instead. The question then is, what is the value of that process change? So the way this works is you actually enter the value of the process by looking at how often that process happens and how much you can change the process and what the business impact is of that change. So for example, first is what's the cyclical period of the process. I mean, processes change with lots of variables, so you can actually choose how often this process happens. Does it happen hourly? Is it an hourly process? Does it happen every day, or does it happen only on work days? Is it something that happens daily? Some number of them happen every day. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? So we can choose, for example, let's say that this process is a process that happens every work day, but only, it's a daily thing, but only happens on work days. It doesn't happen on weekends. So now we say, how often does this process happen in the period? Let's say it happens 10 times. This is a process, for example, that's taking an order, and typically it takes us a certain amount of time to take an order, and let's say we take 100 orders in every workday. Does the business process grow based on employee growth? So this will apply the employee growth CAGR to the business process. And let's assume yes, it does. It's going to grow at the same rate as the business. We can actually set that either to yes or no, but let's assume it is a process that's going to grow. The percentage of process cycles that can be impacted. So the question is, how many of these processes can be impacted? And this can be impacted in one of two ways. Either there's an exception and it can be replaced, or what's called a defect, or we can reduce the time in the process. So let's take a small number and say 10% of our processes are actually impacted. And then the final question is, what is the business value of each impacted cycle? So here we can actually enter the business value, and it can be entered as a decimal value if it's a small value. But let's just say in this case that the savings is $5 per process. So we save $5. Notice that says we've only saved $12,000 is the annual value of this saving in the first year. But on the other hand, if we said that average process is saving $100, then it's $244,000 of savings. So CEBP values are dependent upon how often the process happens and what is the business value the process saves. Business value, and this is described in the very much in the help file, is around what's the profit impact of implementing that process. So for example, if this process says that, for example, we have 100 times the process happens, and 10% of the time we mess up an order, and every time we mess up an order it costs $100, that's a $244,000 annual savings. And obviously, if we go back up here to the top of the tool and we look, you'll see that that's a huge number, $1.2 million of benefit of that CEBP process. So CEBP is a real area to look at in terms of value. And you can do another one, or you can do process continuity. What happens if a failure is averted in the process? We talked about up above where there's a specific failure in the process that doesn't allow you to complete the process and move to the final area. So with that, let's jump to the next one, the next analysis, which is on general business optimization. General business optimization is very similar to CEBP. It really is, again, if you talk to your customer and as you talk to them about the benefits of UC and go beyond the basic benefits, may identify a specific event that happens where UC can impact that event, whether it's an annual drive, or sales completions. So this is a place where you can enter that value. Often, by the way, this may be important where someone who understands business processes from your organization can sit down with the customer and spend some time. Again, huge opportunities in terms of generating value. As you saw in the CEBP case, these can generate large values and large benefits by potentially, on a quarterly event, eliminating costs with building out the quarterly process reports. But that's where you would actually have to talk to your customer and understand their business more effectively. So with that, let's move on to the last section of the benefit entry, which is actually the contact center. The contact center value applies only to the contact center employees we entered in the populations or in the 15 questions. So you notice the number of contact center agents from the data entry tab is right here. We entered 20 in 2013 and 30 in 2018. So there really are two key benefits that we're considering here for contact center agents when you deploy the whole concept of unified communications to them. The first is reducing the find an expert call hold time. So again, we're not talking about contact center improving agents in terms of agent call handling, but rather when an agent needs to find an expert, how quickly can they find the expert now using the tools that unified communication gives them to find the right person to help them answer the problem. So assuming that the average call contact is 4 minutes, the average percentage of calls that require an expert is only 2%. The average wait time to find the expert is 120 seconds. This will then calculate what is the wait time reduction percentage because we actually now can use UC. And so instead of taking 120 seconds, we're saying it's going to take 30% less time, or actually it's going to still take 84 seconds instead of 120. And what it actually does is calculates that as a benefit. And again, you'll see that some of these benefits are relatively small. If we go back up here, you'll actually see that reduction in terms of find an expert is $28,000. The other benefit, by the way, for contact center agents is SIP trunking, which is actually calculated off of the SIP trunking values that were entered up above. Now down below here we have remote agent enablement, which is the percentage of agents that can be remote workers because you now have UC. And what is the annual savings per remote worker, which is a combination of two numbers which we've built and calculated within UCStrategies of not only the office costs that can be eliminated by having remote workers, but also turnover savings. The assumption being that contact center agents that are able to work remote, manage their time more effectively, actually will be much better in terms of managing their costs and stay longer, reducing turnover. Obviously, a 10% reduction in turnover has a huge impact. So with that, we've reached the end of actually looking at the benefit entries. So we will close with a few final comments. Well, that's the end of video training 2. This training part of the training has trained you how to enter benefit value and population values in the tool. Video training 3, the next training session, will focus on how to enter data into the financial analysis, both the ROI and P&L financial analysis, and give you a little bit of details of how to look at that analysis and understand it more effectively. See you in that recording. Bye now.